Hello and welcome to the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines Bryant. Our guest today is Wallace Merriman, and he is a health and fitness coach. And today we're going to talk about several things, but we're going to pinpoint it. We're going to really discuss something that sometimes our mothers as women, they don't tell us about menopause. What are the symptoms? What are you going through? How long are you going to go through it? And how can you deal with those symptoms? And are they real? Because sometimes you feel these things happening to your body when you reach a certain age, but you don't know what it is. So we've got Wallace here to help us kind of weed through what's going on.
Okay, thank you. Thanks,
So,
Stephanie.
so glad to have you here today. And what does that mean, a health and wellness coach for women? Because
Okay.
you specify you deal with primarily women.
Yes, it's interesting, and thank you for having me on your show. One of the biggest things that I think it's so much misinformation out here that people are so confused they don't know what to do, specifically women. So what we end up doing is that we'll start, we'll stop, we'll try something, it doesn't work, but we don't give it time, right? Everything is like a microwave. We want to do it now, we want to get this done now. And unfortunately, that's not how the body operates. So one of the biggest things that I also want to focus on, especially for women, is that it's kind of like because you're so busy, because there's so many other stressors that are involved, because you're dealing with not only work, you're dealing with home, you're dealing with the food, you're dealing with all the other crises, and you're dealing, if you're married, your husband, right? So you got all these other things that you're working with. When do you get time for yourself? And I think one of the biggest things that we do have to focus on, that we're so busy focused on everything else, that we don't give our time for ourselves to be able to focus. So for me, health and wellness is not only just fitness, it's also nutrition, it's also spiritual, it's also mindset, it's also sleep, it's also dealing with the things that are changing as you get older. So it's a roundabout way, but again, it's nutrition, it's exercise, it's fitness, it's eating right, it's mindset, getting sleep, dealing with society, and especially the times that we're dealing with right now. It's really finding out what it is for you that makes you tick and what makes you better.
A lot of times we're dealing, when you get to a certain age, you're dealing with certain symptoms. You may understand them, you may not. How do you balance whether you do it through nutrition, whether you do it through exercise, or both, things like hot flashes, things like mood changes?
Right. That's an excellent question. A lot of people will focus on exercise, but the true fact is that it's really nutrition. And I like to use the analogy that we all have 24 hours in a day. And of the 24 hours, hopefully we're getting 7 to 8 hours of rest. That leaves us 16. Hopefully we're exercising at least an hour, right? God forbid if we don't, right? But if we get that hour, that means there's 15. What are we doing with the other 15? Majority of the time we're eating. Or we should be eating. But what we'll end up doing is we'll focus so much time on the exercise, and you may not exercise, but the 15 hours that you're up, you're probably eating. But what choices are you making? Are they health-related choices, or are they stress-related choices?
What choices should you make, especially for someone like me? I'm diabetic, opposed to someone who's not diabetic, who may be dealing with thyroid issues, who may. How do you? Is it specific to each individual woman?
Good question. Everybody's completely different, and it's also genetics. But I always like to start with a carbohydrate. So I use the analogy of a carbohydrate. To me, is anything that comes from the ground. But there's two types of carbohydrates. One of them is that it's a whole food carbohydrate, meaning it came from the ground, so you're eating it as if whole foods. But there's another carbohydrate, which is your highly processed carbohydrates, is made by man. And the issue with the man-made carbohydrates, it's really sugar. So all the goodness that was put in there originally from the fiber, you're no longer getting that. And what you're dealing with is you're dealing with the sugar. And the more concentrated or highly processed foods we're eating, consider you just taking white sugar and you're consuming it. What it's going to do, it's going to basically trigger many things, but the first thing is your insulin, right? And so some people find out by the doctor and they find out that they're pre-diabetic. And that should be an alarm system to you to say, you know what, I got to get better. But again, we're so busy, we're so focused, and we'll let that bypass, and we'll continue to do the same habits that we were doing before, and before you know it, all of a sudden now you're diabetic.
And another thing with diabetes, it's a silent killer.
It is.
You don't feel pain. You know, you don't feel aches. It's you don't even know what's
Right.
going on.
Yep.
And so that's why you can easily ignore it.
That's right. But we do know the signs, right? And many times the doctor already told you as a warning, right? The issue though is that we're habit patterns. We heard him and we said we got time and we'll fix it. And we'll end up continuing doing the same thing. And unfortunately, your body doesn't really care about that. There's eventually a point in time that your insulin levels will say, okay, well, I'm warning you, I'm telling you, here's the things that you need to do. And the truth is if we can start looking more as eating more of the way that God made the food, then you're going to be in a better place as opposed to everything being manipulated. Here's a good scenario. If you're going to the supermarket, I'd rather you do what's called perimeter shopping. Perimeter shopping means that you go to the produce aisle, you go to the meat aisle, you go to the frozen aisle, you go to the dairy aisle, and then you leave. Right? Everything on the outside of the supermarket is live, or it was close to life. But everything is, as far as you continue to go inside the supermarket, everything is now modified. Everything is shelf stable. Everything is highly processed.
How do you break that bad habit of eating wrong?
Yeah. It's really a mindful situation. So as we eat, if we just take time, I always ask people if they can consider even tracking their food. And a lot of people say that might take a lot of time. I don't want to track food, it takes a lot of time, but the only way you can really figure out what you're doing is by tracking your food by using a device like a MyFitnessPal, that you can literally see the calories that you're eating, the fats, the proteins, the carbs. And even if you didn't do that, then I would ask you just to take a picture of every time you're eating your food, just to take a picture with your phone. What happens is that it allows you to stop for a minute. Because again, we just eat. When we're hungry, the stomach says, I need to eat. But just because the stomach is growling doesn't necessarily mean that you're hungry. What it essentially is saying is, I'm hurting, something's wrong. Your stomach is being stimulated because something's wrong, not necessarily because of food, but we interpret the stomach growling as if maybe you didn't drink water all day.
What do you say to folks who think of changing the way they eat, or a quote unquote diet is deprivation? Yeah. I'm going to starve myself. I'm going to have to do without this, that I can't do this and I can't do that. Yeah. And they get totally turned off.
Right. If someone would take the word diet, to take the same 4 letters and instead just say edit. Same 4 letters, here's diet, but take it and say edit. And what we're doing now is that instead of us thinking about a diet, because a diet means you're sacrificing one of your main food groups. But if you edit, that means that you're changing the way that you're eating, right? So instead, now, I'm gonna eat, if we operate in a starvation mode means that you're causing your blood sugar levels to drop significantly. But there's a point in time that you're gonna eat again. And when we decide to eat again, guess what happens? That we end up most times eating foods that's quick, processed. Well, immediately your insulin level is going to shoot sky high. Now you've been dropping in this deprivation time, but now it needs to also increase. Well, now your insulin shoots up. All these other things, regulatory experiences that you're dealing with in your body, they become overwhelmed. And every time you're causing to shoot up and every time it drops back down significantly, your body's like, what are we doing? I just want to stay consistent. I would ask people to consider eating every 3 to 4 hours, whether they're hungry or not.
But it's about what you eat.
Right.
So you say that, and then people say, so what should I be eating?
Right. And I was going to say to leave that, eating every 3 to 4 hours, whether you're hungry or not, but having a carbohydrate and a protein together.
Okay.
Right? The carbohydrate is essentially, if you're eating it from the ground, here's a whole food product that has also fiber, but it also has nutrients that came from the ground. But then you have a second component, which is your protein, which is the building blocks that your body needs for amino acids. And your protein doesn't necessarily have to come from meat. This is a myth that most people are focused on. Your protein can be coming from a plant-based source, right? The only difference is that if you're eating it from a plant-based source, it's what's called an incomplete carbohydrate because there's not a fat source. You have a complete source when that protein is from an animal-based source because you have the protein and the fat that is together. But you can always use your vegetable-based protein. But again, if you might have the fat, maybe an avocado. Maybe you have avocado oil. Maybe you have a peanut butter or something that has a fat attached to it, and then you're making it whole. So let's not focus so much saying we need to eat the protein to get it from meat. For example, I don't eat beef or pork, and I haven't done that for over 20 years.
And why, for you, does that work?
Because I feel better. And it originally started just not even to go back, but everybody has their own wellness experience that makes them want to change.
Indeed.
Right? Everyone has one, or you should get one, right? Mine was in my 20s, and what it did was that when I started kind of eliminating certain foods from my diet, I started feeling better. When I eliminated the red meat, I felt better. When I eliminated the pork, I felt better. Then all of a sudden I started realizing there were certain foods that made me feel better. They gave me, a better feeling, and there were other foods that made me feel sluggish and tired, constipated, draw out, not feeling my best. And if we could take time to be mindful about the food that we're consuming, that as you're taking it in or before you stop, remember we were saying before, it's take a picture. Here's your plate of food. If you take a picture of it, it gives you a split second to make a decision. Should I be eating this food though? I'm not sure. It doesn't resonate. Why am I eating this food? Or if you're tracking it, at least you can say, at the end of the day, here's the food I ate. Was it an emotional experience I was dealing with today? Did I eat today? Did I prepare my food? Was I in a rush? Did I get processed food because I just simply didn't have time? Am I in a hormonal imbalance that I need something just to make me feel good right away?
So how do you know you have to just kind of experiment?
It does, yes. We do have to slow down. The simple fact of just sitting down and eating our food, the beauty is, and let me give you this example, is that when we're eating our food, many times we're rushing, but when we rush, we swallow the food and we don't give the ability to, and we should be chewing our food until it's actually liquefied in our body, in our mouth, which might take 20 to 40 chews. That means the enzymes in your mouth are breaking the food down immediately. But no, we're in a rush. We're just woofing the food down. We're not, but now it's being in chunks. Do you think your body has the ability to digest the food that's in chunks? No, it's just gonna run it right through the system. And maybe all this nutritional food that you've been consuming, because you didn't give it the ability to break down, you may end up losing all the resources that you thought you were getting.
What do you think about all of these weight loss solutions coming out, the different injections that you can take, things like that? I'm all for that, but you have to change your habits.
Yes.
You can't just take this needle and this whatever and think it's all going to be solved. You've got to commit.
That's right.
To making a lifestyle change.
A lot of people, again, remember we were talking about the microwave approach.
Yes.
That is the microwave approach for many people. Yes, that is a good solution, but it can't be the ultimate reason that I'm going to take this and I'm going to continue to do the same things I'm having. You have to change your habits. Many times you're hoping that a doctor or somebody gives you the ability to say, listen, we're going to do this, but here's the things I need you to do ahead of time. I need you to analyze why you're doing it. I also need you to take a look at the foods that you're consuming. Are you willing to change? Or are you just going to use this as another Band-Aid? Because that Band-Aid is going to cause you to backfire. So if we're going to look at any of these things, I would hope that a doctor or someone would give you some advice beforehand that let's look at options that are available to you before you do that, because are we doing this for the right reasons? Or are you just saying that I want to do the next thing that everybody else is doing? Because everybody's body is different. And we can talk about this from menopause, perimenopause. Everybody's body is totally different. I can't give a recommendation advice as a carte blanche. This is what everybody needs to do, because again, some people have hot flashes, some people don't. Some people lose weight, some people don't. Some people keep weight around their stomach, and some people don't. Some people can sleep all night, some people can't. But everybody's completely different, and it could be basically from the food that you're consuming or lack thereof. It could be from are you drinking enough water? Are you getting a sufficient amount of rest?
Have you been hearing too? I've been reading lately too. Now they're saying everything was water, water, water. Make sure you drink water. Now they're saying maybe you can get sick from drinking too much water.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it?
Right, right. That's when it's tricky because we sufficiently do not drink enough water as whole. And the difficult part is that 85% of our brain or our body is all water. And if we don't drink a sufficient amount of water, what happens is that the water that you have or the toxins and the inflammation that you have never gets a chance to release. So what we end up doing is if we don't drink enough water, honestly, it's very difficult for a person to say that they drink too much. I'm pretty comfortable to say that a lot of people don't drink
I agree.
enough. It's more like on the other side that we're not drinking enough. And if we do drink enough, the beauty is the body will use what it needs, but it'll excrete the rest out. And if it has the ability to excrete the rest out, we're talking inflammation, we're talking all the toxins, you're allowing your body to detoxify itself. Do we really need to do these detoxes and everything? No, the body will do it itself if you give it the tools that it needs. Right, so we really need to focus on, as opposed to those detoxes and everything else, I ask you just to eliminate the processed foods, eliminate the sodas, eliminate all the sugars, drink more quality water. Again, 85% of the water we drink, unfortunately, is tap water.
Okay, so for example, I know everybody's body is different. So for example, if you have one of the common symptoms of menopause, hot flashes, what would you recommend to a client?
First of all is identify what's causing it, right? So the starting point would be if everybody's not going to be the same, but the first thing is, how long has it been going on? How about making a diary at the end of the day and say, here's the things that I was dealing with, but we also got to look at what else is you're dealing with in your life. Are there a bunch of stressors that are available to you? Are you dealing with a parent or a spouse?
Because we're in that sandwich generation.
Absolutely.
You're dealing with your children and you're dealing with your parents.
Right. The finances.
Yep.
Right?
Retirement.
We got to look at all these other factors because all of these other things are also triggering not only just the hormonal imbalances that are happening inside the body, but we also have to look at the external environment that we're dealing with and say, wow, I didn't really think about the stresses that I'm dealing with, because as women, you take on a lot, but you also take in a lot, and it's not being released. So think about all the stresses that you're dealing with and you're holding in and you're dealing with everybody else. When do you get the time for yourself? So I would ask everybody at the end of the day is to kind of just do a journal and say, here, I've had hot flashes, I've had these things, my stomach has been upset, I haven't been able to eat, I'm dealing with these stresses, I'm getting headaches, I'm getting migraines, my weight is not changing, but I'm doing everything, I'm working out, I'm doing the right thing. Well, there's other things. It's so interesting to find out that as you reach 30, 40, 50, and 60, for women, that all those changes happen, but we just say that we're getting older. But no, it's a hormonal mix of things that are happening. And I would ask you to think more eating towards a Mediterranean diet.
And what does that include? Because we hear that all the time, but what does that mean?
Yep. Mediterranean diet is more a plant-based diet, but you also have the ability to have fish, right? You can have chicken, but everything that you want to eat is closer to the land. You're trying to eliminate the sugars, you're trying to eliminate all the processed foods, but anything you're thinking more clean.
What about artificial sweeteners?
It's not a good deal simply because we end up consuming too much of it, number one. And number two, that there's a lot of natural sweeteners that you can use. For example, stevia, big fan of stevia, agave, right? But there are other ones that, again, they're camouflaging, right? So here's the sugar, but you're also taking these imitation, but they're also chemicals. Those chemicals could also cause imbalances in your body also. So for a good example, we were talking about this before, that I make almond milk and
Yes.
cashew milk.
I love cashew milk. I love it. It just makes those smoothies creamier.
Right.
It just has a different texture.
It does.
Flavor.
And it's nice if you're able to make it. It's funny how you make it, but then you'll get it from the store. And it's funny, if you make it, you'll notice that the almond or the cashews will drop down to the bottom. and you'll have to stir it if I'm making it naturally. But you don't have to do that from the supermarket because there's guar gum and all these other things that are keeping it solidified. But these are also chemicals that we're taking in, right? So if a person's going to get almond milk from outside, you have one, and what I used to do is I would get the unsweetened almond milk with the vanilla, which means there's vanilla extract in it. And this one might say it was 20 calories per serving, but then you would get the one that's not unsweetened, and this one is 90 calories. And that's from straight sugar that's in there, right? But you can do that on your own. Why not getting the unsweetened? And people don't realize just by the simple vanilla extract that's in there, it actually makes it feel sweeter. And if you needed to put something in there, sure, you can put a little agave in there. You can put a little stevia in there, but it's under your terms, right? You now make the decision. But if we allow the competition or the manufacturers to do all these things on our own, we're drinking a lot of things that that is really unnecessary.
And you sort of mentioned this, how a lot of times you think you're doing the right things. You're exercising. You think you're eating right. And you think you're in an okay emotional place, but the scale isn't moving. I had that for years.
Yep.
But instead of obsessing over a scale, I said, I'm not going to obsess over this. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just not going to get on it.
Right.
And if I feel my clothes are getting too tight, I know something's going on. If the clothes are loose, I know. But I wasn't going to obsess over that. But I know a lot of people. I talk to so many people who are in that place. They're doing the right thing, and they're so frustrated because the scale isn't moving.
Yep. I'll give you 4 tips. When I'm sitting down with a client, these are the 4 things I always want to address. And since we're talking about this, let's allow your audience to also think about these 4 things. And the first one is, like we said before, the majority of time you should focus on your nutrition, because that is the biggest component. And if we talk about it, again, we're saying that we want to eat throughout the day to allow our blood sugar levels to stay stable. So again, if we're eating every 3 to 4 hours, whether you're hungry or not, having a protein and a carbohydrate, that controls your blood sugar. If we get into exercise, you have 2 forms of exercise. One is cardio,
yes,
and one is strength training. And unfortunately, we spend too much time doing cardio. We spend way too much time doing cardio. The beauty is, as we do strength training, what happens is you're building muscle. When you build muscle, you're actually turning your body into a furnace. When you turn your body to a furnace, you're burning fat and energy sources even at rest. So while your body recovers and you're building muscle, your body is also continuing to burn energy. Imagine having the ability to burn fat even while you're sleeping, even while you're recovering, and that's because you're building muscle. Here's the catch, though, is that when you build muscle, muscle retains water. So then the scale may not drop down as quick as you may think, but you will see, as you continue to build muscle and you eliminate the fat, that your clothes start to change, right? The scale may not move, but you're like, whoa, wait a minute, my shirt don't feel as tight. My shirt, my belt buckle, I'm able to pull us in a little bit. It's simply because we're working out a little bit more. So if someone asked me, I would say 2/3 of your time you should focus on strength training, and 1/3 of your time you should do cardio, right? Cardio strengthens the heart, but strength training strengthens the entire body.
As we're running out of time, you said there are 4 things, so you did 2.
Yep.
So
Here's the other 2. The next one is making sure you stay hydrated, drinking a sufficient amount of water. Also supplement, right? Because many times the food,
big supplement
food that we, right. If we think about it, our soil is depleted, so our nutrients are supposed to come from the soil. So if it's not coming from the soil, where are you getting your nutrients from? The thing with nutrients is that supplement companies are not regulated.
Yep.
So supplement
have to get a
companies,
good one.
you have to make sure that you're doing due diligence to make sure you're getting sufficient amount of nutrients from a reputable company that's following what's called GMP, good manufacturing practices.
Okay.
And the last one is getting enough rest and getting rid of stress. If we don't get a sufficient amount of rest, we don't allow the body to recover. So now you're doing all this exercise, but if you're not getting enough rest, your body doesn't recover. So not saying that you're losing, but you're also not benefiting. And especially if we're talking about hormones, the more that we don't rest, your body actually revolts on itself and causes you to maintain or gain the weight. Right?
Nobody wants to hear that.
Right? You want to try to get as much rest as you can and focus on 7 to 8 hours of
I
consistent.
was just getting ready to, what is a good number?
A consistent. Let's make it that if you're going to go to bed at a certain time, make it consistent every day. 7, 8 hours, but going to bed the same time. We're not Netflix binging all night and we're going to bed at 10 and 11 and 2 and 1. Your body loves the fact of consistency.
How much water should you be drinking? You said drink water, but how much is?
I usually say, and this is what most people will say, that you should drink at least half your body weight. I'm going to say that I usually want people to focus on trying to meet 100 fluid ounces a day.
Okay.
100 fluid ounces. That's an even base. It's a simple thing that you look at because if you weigh 300 pounds, what are you supposed to drink 150 ounces of water? No, that's a lot. That's drinking excessively. But if you focus on that range of 100, that's sufficient amount for you to not only get a sufficient amount that you need to drink, but also give the body the ability to release the toxins and the
And that's an
inflammation.
easy number to remember.
It
It's
is.
an easy number to keep track of.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up the show, can you give us some advice? And you're an expert in women's health, and one of your issues that you deal with on a regular basis is menopause. What is your best advice for someone going through the change?
Good. The biggest thing is that I want you to just journal. Journal and look at yourself every single day and find out what are the things that are causing these triggers. What are the things that you can see that maybe you're not doing correctly. I want you to focus on your nutrition. Again, getting your sleep, check it off. Did I get a sufficient amount of sleep? Check, I'm good there. Did I eat sufficient amount of food? Sometimes we eat too little and we think that that's the right thing. We have to eat, right? Our body needs fuel and energy. And then the last one again is the hydration. Are we drinking a sufficient amount of fluid? If you can check those things off, I imagine that you're gonna say, wow, I feel a lot better.
And how do you reduce that stress? Last but not least.
You got to get some rest. You got to get some rest.
And I think sometimes the stress is keeping us up.
Yeah. you really got to focus on getting quality rest. And we got to take that cell phone and you got to take it. You can't leave it even at your bedside because every time that thing buzzes, we feel this inclination that we got to grab it. I would rather you take it and put it in a dresser that's on the other side of your bedroom, because now you got to think twice. I'm going to go and get it. But if it's right here, we can close our eyes and grab it. But if it's on the other side of your bedroom, you got to physically get up and you say, it's not that important.
You know what, Wallace? I need to do that because it's right next. It's on the bedstand. Right. And every time that thing goes off, whether it's 6 a.m. or whether it's midnight, you're right there.
Yeah.
And you have the inclination to just grab it.
Absolutely.
There's nothing that important unless there's an that you need to, that sale at Macy's that pings.
That's right.
You get the text for this ridiculous stuff that can interrupt your sleep.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. It has been a joy talking to you.
I did enjoy
We've been
it.
talking to Wallace Merriman, and he's a health and wellness expert, and he specializes in women, which I like.
Yeah.
You've been watching the Sisters for Fitness Wellness show. I'm Stephanie Gaines Bryant. Have a great day.